Now, a lot of people say to me, okay, great, let's talk about this. What's this automotive thing? A couple different numbers to lay it ground. Why do people even want to spend time in the automotive industry? Now, you know this. You guys are part of the captive industry. But just a lot of people don't know this when I talk about it, so I just level set. About 100 million vehicles a year are being sold, right? Brand new vehicles are being sold. And there's about 1.1 billion vehicles on the road today. And if you listen to the projections, all things being equal, which we know is never held true, but if you listen to the projections, it could be 3.5 billion by 2050. And there's an estimated $1 trillion available in this automotive economy in around the year 2020. So it's a big thing. It's a lot of money. But what really is the big deal? Big deal started out when we talked about data and what was happening with data. Frost & Sullivan came out and said, hey, $14.5 billion in automotive data by 2020. They put the first real projected number, put it down, wrote a report. It suddenly became cited as gold for what was the real value of the vehicle. Woo, sorry. Where's that vehicle data? What is that data? It comes from things that are traditional, the connected car diagnostics and other things. But what is not really known, what's not really known, are what my friends earlier today talked about in terms of metadata and these things. So let's talk a little bit about that, and that's captured in this kind of last point. In the 1950s in the US, when you drove a car, most of you drove a car to go just kind of down Main Street. It was an enjoyable thing. It was a new thing. It was fun. Today, 99.99% of all drives in the US, and the number's slightly less in Europe, are what they call intent drives. You are in a car with intent and purpose. You are going from point A to point B. You are not leisurely driving, so you have intent. Number two, about 85% of drives are now what they call singleton drives, i.e. you and you alone in the vehicle. Now, what we do know is that if you're driving from point A to point B with intent and purpose, and you're by yourself, you represent a pretty optimal target. And so we look at companies who can harvest and manufacture and understand data. If I can tell them intent, purpose, history, and isolate you to the companies that know how to manage data, this is absolutely golden. But in order to be able to do it, you have to know how to harvest it, analyze it, and process it. And there are lots of people interested in automotive data. You'll see not a single one of these people necessarily is a finance company, maybe PayPal. Lots of people want to know why you're moving from point A to point B so that they can try and influence you on that movement from point A to point B. But how are they getting it today? Today, the way they get it are things called Obd Dongles, little things you stick in the bottom of your car. For those of you who have seen it, it's been made most infamous. In fact, it's become exceptionally now phenomenal in the common day press because of our friends at Volkswagen, how they have talked about OBD. Most people didn't know what the OBD was. Now today in press, almost everybody knows what the OBD is in the mere span of 2 months. However, there are problems with that. OBD represent problems. We'll talk a little bit about that. But a little bit more data here, just a little bit more data. In the US, we spend roughly 1.2 hours a day in the car. 1.2 hours a day in the car. Now, we could talk about the fact that there's like 175 hours in a week and that this represents a mere fraction of it. But again, remember, I'm singleton and I'm driving with purpose. We spend about 38 hours roughly in the States in terms of idling. We're waiting because of traffic, other issues, where I have downtime. Okay? OEMs are recognizing this, and there are lots of different OEMs trying to come up with solutions. Connected car, you're hearing about it, infotainment, other. I mean, the topics go on and on and on and on and on. What is key, though, is understand this. It's fractured, it's small, and it is in no way, shape, or form really changing the face of the market. So OEMs' actions, fractured, small, and really not changing the market. Now, let's just do a little exercise to kind of create some paranoia inside of you today, okay? So one of the guys that works for me has a desktop, and we started measuring this way, way back when Ford was starting to contemplate this relationship with Google. And so we put this together so we could present to people why, in fact, is Google interested. So here we go. His desktop. There's a company called privacyfix.com. Some of these slides, actually, I think Edward has, all these slides will be available, so you don't feel free to take notes, but Privacy Fix makes a plugin into your browser, and they go through and they look at things in your cookie cache and other sorts of cool stuff. And they build for you a portfolio of who you are and what people see about you based on your browsing. And so right there is a reflection of about 3 months worth of data from this one particular desktop for this one particular employee of mine. Now, Privacy Fix doesn't stop there. They take that data and they pass it to a company called Trefis.com. Trefis.com is a US company, and their sole existence, they're the morning star. If you will think about Morningstar tracking prices, they track prices of AdWords. That's all they do. They track prices of the AdWords that Google transacts. So for those of you who don't know Google or don't understand how Google works, every term you put into the search bar has some type of value, and it is real-time, instantaneously auctioned off at the time you hit the return button. They're doing millions upon millions of instantaneous auctions for value of a word. Trefis.com tracks that and understands what those values are. Now, in the case of my friend, my employee, Kevin, and his search over that 3 months, his value was roughly estimated at $565 of hard, cold cash spent from the brands on the right to Google to nuance his search. Now, it doesn't stop there. All those brands also use something called Google Analytics. Hey, Google came up with a really cool tool to allow me to manage my website. When people come to my website, when they leave from my website, how many pages they've seen, what they do when they're on. This is so cool. I'm going to use this thing called Google Analytics. Well, guess what? When you accept the I accept Google Analytics, you also give all that data to Google. So 25% of these major brands are pumping roughly, well, actually all of their data because they're Google Analytics-based companies. And it doesn't stop there either. How many of you have seen the Facebook like button on sites anywhere in the world? You could just like that page, and all of a sudden you get to be known as a person that follows the page. 94% of the sites that my friend Kevin is seeking and following have the like button on it. What does that mean? It means Facebook also gets all the data from when you visit these sites. Now, something to keep in mind is this is just one machine. He has lots of machines in his life. He has laptop. His wife has a laptop. His kids have gaming devices. His wife has an Android phone. He has an Android phone, and his kids now have Android phones. The estimated worth, if we run all these numbers for the year just closed, 2014, is roughly $5,500 US were spent from brands around the world to Google, and only Google, because of my friend Kevin and his family's search behavior. One person in a world of 6.2 billion, $5,500. Okay, so because of that, and Google's not alone, Apple's doing it, Facebook's doing it, Twitter's doing it, LinkedIn, et cetera, et cetera. So it's no wonder, right? They say follow the money. It's no wonder that Apple and Google are actually trying to get into the automotive industry. It is no wonder and no surprise that they're trying to get into this multi-trillion-dollar industry. It's not a surprise. But what actually are they doing, and what does it really mean to us and to you? Okay. So today, roughly, 25 plus connected cars in the world, brands. We talk about them, Ford, Chevy, we all have them. We all have them, we all talk about them. And we've all branded them. They're branded Mercedes, Embrace, Toyota, Entune, Chevy, MyLink. They're branded, and they're ours. They're our brands. They're our connected car. But there's 25 different ones of them. They look different. They behave different. They smell different. So what is Google doing? What's Apple doing? They're coming in with one solution for all. That's what they're doing. So again, if we go back to what we had before, notice carefully all the brands. Watch really carefully. Ready? Y'all say yes to Apple. Now look at the brands. They're all Apple coming in. Here we go. Oh, the brand. Yes, it didn't. The brands went away. The names are there, but the brands went away. They're all gone. Entune's gone. MyLink's gone. Ford Sync is gone. They're all gone. And pretty soon, if we're not careful, these brands will be gone. So what does this really mean? What is the impact on devices? I threw this in here as a purpose of sort of notification. I'm not going to go over it. Long and the short is we will expect and can see, based on the historical precedence between Apple and Google, impact on anyone who builds hardware in this economy. Anyone. If you're a car maker, if you're a phone maker, you're going to get impacted, and the impact's roughly going to be like that. Let's be very clear. It's not good for you. You're getting marginalized, you're getting price competitive, and you're going to get pushed and squeezed hard. There's also going to be impact on ecosystems. Ecosystems. What the OEMs, the automotive OEMs don't understand is that Apple and Google aren't just phone, in fact, they're not phone guys. They're not phone guys. People, you don't carry a phone. The physical device that you carry is a digital manifestation or a physical manifestation of your digital life ecosystem, that ecosystem that you've chosen to associate yourself with. You've chosen to associate yourself with a Google or with an Apple or with a Facebook or with a Microsoft or an Alibaba or a Yahoo because they offer you value. They offer you something, and in return, you're willing to stay in that ecosystem. So what Google and Apple are doing, and what's coming hard right after them, is going to impact every single digital life mobile ecosystem that exists in the world. Every product offering, mail, search, news, everything that you take for granted today in your ecosystem is going to be challenged by what is coming. Now, who's next? Like I mentioned, this is about digital life mobile ecosystems. Google and Apple are not the only ones. In fact, right here we can talk quite frankly about the fact that Google's under assault in the European Union right now. We've got a lot of issues. We talked about data retention under the Data Privacy Acts that happened. Those are courtesy of the behavior, mostly from Google. We do know that Google may or may not succeed long-term here in Europe. So, okay, great, but they're not the only ones. We got Google, we got Apple. I mentioned briefly Alibaba, Tencent, Weibo, Facebook, Microsoft. Each of these have ecosystems that measure into the hundreds of millions of subscribers that actively participate in those ecosystems. So the auto industry, when it thinks it's just Google and Apple, are wrong and are going to be surprised. Because as soon as Google and Apple show how to crack it, the rest are coming. But what is the real impact? Why do you spend time listening to me today in the finance world? It's the $0 car, or the £0 car, or the euro car. It's the zero equivalent unit of currency car. So let's talk a little bit about that. This is a car, modern day car. These are just a fraction of the sensors that are in the car. Actually, it's a little bit more than a fraction. It's a lot of sensors. It's not all the sensors, though. I got to point out, these are representative. Every car might be different. The locations might be different. But this is meant to give you a sense for the kinds of things that are in the cars that you buy today. You can see all the cool different names and all that. Now, if I were to go and start packaging these sensors, traction control, headlight, clock, wiper, rain, barometer, I could get a pretty good idea of the weather happening at a particular car at a particular location. I have a really good idea of the weather in terms of I know it's raining, but with the wiper and the fact that the wiper might be moving fast versus slow, it might be really, really raining. So I actually know really, really closely what the weather is in a particular car. Or maybe another sensor package might be the rear object detection, the wheel speed thermometer, the front detection. I can start figuring out traffic. Another one might be the microphone. I can start figuring out what people are saying. So those are the sensors that are there today. They're in cars today. This is not fanciful. This is not new. They're in cars today. And so let's talk about what's in a car today. Here's just I love to give this thought exercise. This is a sample of a 30-day period when people were speaking to their car, asking the car what to do. That's a sample. The size of the word is the frequency of the request. The color of the word represents the truth factor in terms of the Bayesian analysis to know what they said, whether or not I'm accurate, what my accuracy level is. More green, more accurate, more red, less accurate, bigger the word, more said, smaller the word, less said. That's what, 30 days. But if I look at it, there's way more than just a pretty picture. I've got key insights in the data, hugely key insights. So let's take all that, let's start packaging it. Let's walk down scenario one. A day in the life of a dealer who's smart and understands sensors. So he has a car on the lot for $40,000. And he sits there with Joe and he says, Joe, on behalf of Ford Motor Company, I'd like to buy from you in perpetuity sensor package 1, all the weather. I'm going to sell it to you for $6,000 by taking it immediately off your car price today. Sign it today in perpetuity. Cars right now, $34,000. We're just starting that conversation. Sign away. Joe signs. Next up, Joe, I'd love to take sensor package 2. All the stuff that talks about traffic and the allowance and where you're at. And for that, I'm willing to give you $4,000. Sign away today. Car's now $34,000. Sorry, $30,000. Hey, I want the mic package, number 3. And down we go until at the very end of it, Joe's got $0 on the invoice. A $0 car. Now, who actually bought that data? How did that happen? Well, Ford Motor Company actually went around and went to the NOAA, the National Oceanic Aerospace, and said, hey, you're trying to put in these sensors all around the world. You're trying to put in these stations around the world. Why? So you can better predict Hurricane Sandy. In fact, it's known as had they had better data, Hurricane Sandy wouldn't have levied the $68 billion of insurance loss and injury. It would have levied something more close to $20 billion. So there's $40 billion to have been saved by the insurance company. Ford could go in and say, I can give you sensor data. I can give you sensor data everywhere that there are people. Where there are people is where your loss is. I can give you data. No one signs up for it because it's cheaper to get real-time data than it is to try and build weather stations. I can go to all the DOTs around the world. I can buy your vehicle bouncing sensors, figure out what the roads are like. I don't have to put up probes anymore. I don't have to do anything. I will buy that data from you. I will buy data from the very vehicles that are on the networks that I'm servicing. It is cheaper for me to buy the data than it is for me to try and manage it myself. So I will buy data. Ford Motor Company, I will gladly buy data. Or all the brands. What did you ask for? You were going from point A to point B, there's a Starbucks right there. I'll sell you coffee right now, $3. And in fact, because I know where your car's at, you just literally drive by and Michael will walk out and hand it to you as you're walking. No need to stop. And I'm automatically debiting. You laugh. But when did drive-thrus come about? They didn't come about in the 1950s. They came about in the 70s and the early 80s. That's what this future holds. Now, you look at that and you say, that's really cool. And my contest is this: Ford Motor Company can't do it, BMW can't do it, Chrysler can't do it, GM can't do it. They have all the pieces, but they can't do it. Why? Because they sell cars. They sell cars. And they live in a world where they ship and forget. They build the car, they sell the car, they forget about the car. It's done, gone, forgotten. Anytime I want to think about a car that I've already sold, I am at a loss. I am losing money. So the OEMs, while they have it, can't do this. Scenario number 2. How about an ecosystem subsidy? So we talked about the value of the fact that you're about $5,500. That's the one guy. That's just one guy's family. And he's a smart guy. So he's got a lot of VPN stuff and other security cloaking software on his machines, and he's still getting that kind of value proposition. So if you're just a standard person, as I alluded to at the earlier session, where you click through, a lot of people just click through licenses and they don't know what they're actually clicking through and what they're actually accepting, your value is probably higher. And the more we can learn about you, the more we infiltrate your lives, the more we're willing to pay, so the more your value is going to go up. So that number is not going down, it's going to go up. So I know it's going up, I know it's valuable, so hey, ecosystem subsidy, different price car. The ecosystem say, tell you what, on every year and each and every year, I'll give you your full subsidy back. I will give it back to you so that you stay in the car. And I will give you a car for free. I will give you the car for free. So let's connect the dots, and then we can get to some question and answer periods. Now, I was going to animate this, and I thought, no, I'll give it to you all in one section, because my narrative may or may not be the same as your narrative. But everything starts with the digital life ecosystem. That's the data point. These are ecosystems. Google's not just a company. Apple's not just a company with just a product that people are trying to fight. Their product is an ecosystem of which many things are served by Google to keep you in that ecosystem. We are in a world where companies have to move from ship and forget to ship and remember. If you do not remember your customers, the products that they've bought, if you do not work with them on a day-to-day basis, just like the Googles, Apples, Amazons, Facebooks, LinkedIn's, et cetera, are, you won't be around. The mere fact that you have billions of dollars of factories in the ground will suddenly change from being a great asset to a huge liability. You must become ship and remember. Tech brand trust. Small little study suggests that millennials, we talked about that, they associate more trust in terms of tech with tech companies than anyone else. Yet every OEM likes to think of themselves as a tech company. But the studies suggest that they would trust a Google over Ford for a car. They would suggest they would maybe trust an Apple over BMW for a car. Another data point, the sharing economy. We've been talking about it. If less and less people buy cars, urbanization, all the other stuff, and we move to sharing economies, what happens? Right now, we sell cars for individuals. We expect that one person drives the car. In fact, we call it the driver. Not the owner, not the occupants, the driver. Everything is centered on the driver. We talk about the driver. In a world where we today sell to multiple people, we don't know how to handle that. Who actually holds the car? Who holds the paper? Who holds the liability? Who holds the risk? These are questions that are being challenged right now. And guess what? The service companies, the folks who have come in and said, hey, everything's a service, I'm a software company and I can service it, are challenging everything in that regard. We have autonomous coming. Google, Again, I talked to you about the fact they're not a product company. They're an ecosystem company of which they make things to make you sticky. The next big thing, they've created search, they've created maps, they've created all sorts of these tools that are free. They are free. You don't pay a single dollar in terms of actual blue dollars across. But what you do is you sign away a little bit more in terms of your data, your privacy. So they are, in fact, extracting value for what they build. And their next big up is the autonomous car. Not because they care about the car, not because they care about making cars safer, not because they care about the auto industry. If they can make an autonomous car, you don't have to keep your hands on the wheel, eyes on the road, which means you can interact with something else. Guess what you have with you 7 days a week, 24 hours a day? A device. If I can give you autonomous drive, I convert you into a person of interest from point A to point B with absolute dedicated focus on the device in front of you. Your convert rate has now gone high, and Google wants that conversion. We have a problem in the car. Cars are becoming utilitarian. We use them to go from point A to point B. It's slow. It's coming. The more we add more people to cities, the harder it becomes to drive, the less people want to drive. In fact, a recent study by Frog suggests that 30% of those surveyed in the millennial basis from the US, Canada, China, and Denmark would in fact give up their car before their smartphone. And in fact, 37% said they'd just give up the car completely if they could figure out an alternative way to travel. So we are moving at a pace where we have issues in terms of ownership. And last but not least, a little fun fact over there, a recent study by Stanford, it's a couple years old now, roughly 30% of the cost of a retail vehicle in the States is due to distribution. Marketing it, presenting it, putting it on a truck, getting it out, getting it to a dealer, getting it prepped, getting it clean, 30% of a car is distribution. So you put all those facts together, you say, what's going on? Oh, by the way, this little one, I don't know if you all heard this, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, it caused a stir, it caused Volvo to have to come back, and now Ford and others are coming along the way. But Google went up. Sergey Brin went up and said, Larry Page said, hey, we are going to insure our vehicles. You get into a car accident in a Google autonomous vehicle, you're not at fault, we got it, we covered it, we're carrying the paper. That then caused Volvo to step up and say, well, that seems natural and reasonable, so now Volvo's gone up and talked about it, now there are caveats behind it. But one of the fears in the insurance industry is Google becomes self-insured. That means they become an insurance company. They already are searching. People use Google to search to try and swap carriers. We have billions of dollars in the carrier industry for insurance. What stops Google from becoming an insurance player? And if they're an insurance player in the automotive, how quickly do they become an insurance player in everything else, your health and everything else? Because again, we trust tech. So the way that this is going to go down, I don't know. But there are 4 quotes that sort of should direct your paranoia. The first one came from Mark Andreessen. Software is eating everything. The world of software is coming. Everything is going to get affected by it. No longer can you sit here as an executive and say it won't hit me. Number 2, David Kirkpatrick, journalist out of the New York Times. Every company is now a software company. And if you don't understand that, and if you don't recognize that, and if you don't agree with that, let us know because we want to short your stock. Ayn Rand. We can evade reality, but we cannot evade the consequences of evading reality. These guys are here, they're smart, they're sharp, they know software, they know analytics. For them, this problem is a data problem. The things that we have sold and transacted for our world that we thought was the real value, those items, are merely the carcasses that carry the real value, which is data. And the last one, both a curse and a promise. May you live in interesting times. Thank you.